And I think we're about ready. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I think we're just going to wait a couple seconds to allow other attendees into the webinar. So sit tight for just a second and enjoy this lovely photo here. This lovely screensaver we got here. Okay, well, my name is Jenna Beckenhaupt. Well, Jenna Quinn. I'm still getting used to that. My name is Jenna Quinn. I'm the new Assistant Director of Alumni Engagement here at CSULB. And it's my pleasure to welcome you all to today's edition of the 49er Industry Chat. And before we get started, I just want to inform you all that this session is being recorded and it will be available for you all folks to review again on demand at www.csulb.edu/alumni. If you have any questions for our host today, we encourage you to go ahead and submit your questions into the Q&A box and we'll get that relayed to our guest speaker. And so I'd like to introduce Benjamin Randy Stockton. I'll just read you guys a little bit about him. Randy Stockton is the founder and former CEO of a $75 million ARR technology service firm, which he managed for nearly 30 years. He sold his company in 2021 to focus on organizing a long-term investment strategy and to create the Benjamin R. Stockton Endowed Scholarship here at CSULB. After spending most of his life focused on business, Benjamin has learned that capitalism requires a single-minded focus and can be quite competitive. He currently enjoys spending time with his family and his philanthropic ventures. Please join me in welcoming today's 49er Industry Chat host, Benjamin Randy Stockton. Hi, Randy.
Good morning, everyone. I'm assuming it's morning. Most of us are on the Pacific Coast here, I think.
That is true, yes. But thank you for reminding me, because depending on when people log in here and view it on demand, it could be any time of day. So hello and welcome.
Thank you.
Randy, if you could just share a little bit about yourself, about your, what brought you to CSULB when you were here, and talk about what you majored in, and talk about your experiences here at the beach.
I put some of that stuff in my slides, but basically I did it inside out. I'm not very good about talking about myself, so I started out talking about business and all that. But in a nutshell, Cal State and before that Cypress College are two of the main reasons why I'm not milking a cow or driving a truck. Education in this country is and remains today, in spite of so many challenges you read about in the news, the pathway to the middle class, as they say. And I certainly found it to be more of a railway ticket to to the middle class, because the minute I graduated, I got promoted at work. They figured, wow, a person with a degree, wow, that's okay, we'll move right on up. And then I went back for a master's degree almost a decade later. Well, no, more than a decade, 12 years later. Woo! And then it took me a couple of years to do it. So I have a degree in '78 and then a degree in 1992. The other thing about Cal State that the alumni certainly know, the teaching staff is just phenomenal. They're not just in their professionalism and erudition, but they're great people. And one of the things that really did me a lot of good is coming off the farm and trying to figure out how to get an education. I said that in a funny way, trying to joke around. But yeah, I really relied on the professors and all the other staff to facilitate that whole experience. And yes, I worked my way through college. Um, I initially had the GI Bill, but that's a time-bound system, and so they ran out of money at a certain point. And I was one of those commuter students, which Cal State is just a phenomenal institution to help people who have to work for a living also be able to get an education. And one of the reasons I wanted to do the scholarship is just thinking about all the people that I went to school with that, I'll take a page out of my own history. That darn essay is due tomorrow, and I'm working at 3:30 in the afternoon to midnight 30 shift. Okay, there, that's fun. Now get home and write yourself an essay. So that was a really personal experience for me, having to do it myself. And I'm just aware of what people go through when they're having to work their way through. They don't have social assets like, Bill Gates had his father that found his business. Me and Bill Gates went in business in the same day that summer in 1978. He's Bill Gates and I'm not. And there might be a reason for that. Part of it might be the assets he had socially in starting his business. And maybe he's just a genius or something.
One of those two things, right? Well,
Yeah,
I know that you prepared a PowerPoint for us, so
yeah.
I go ahead and share that with us, and share your story with us.
Well, there's a share button here. Let's see if I can make that happen. Just watching my phone mess with me. Oh, here it is right here. This looks like it. You see
There
my
you
screen
go.
now, right?
Absolutely.
Well, you're such a good interviewer, Jenna. We're going to end up rehashing a little bit of the same stuff. But, I won't spend a lot of time on things that we've covered already. For those of who might not know the acronym, this just means annual recurring revenue. That means we didn't make 75 million in profit. We made $75 million in billings. Those were the invoices that we wrote. So of course we had lots and lots of costs, and we tried to make a profit out of that. And the business we were in at the time, I guess I'll get to that in a moment. But here's this part about going to junior college, to begin with. Later it was called community college. The GI Bill was a very important element in being able to do that, financial assistance in that way. And that's what gave me the idea for the scholarship. Was like, wow, so many people, the GI Bill is not even the same as it used to be. And so many people can't even get that anyway. So the scholarship that we were able to endow is a remarkable thing. And the Cal State Foundation and the university really deserves a lot of respect. They can take a small amount of money, like I was able to donate, and turn that into a lifetime fund that just keeps renewing and keeps renewing and keeps renewing. Apparently, we'll be able to offer these scholarships 2 per year in perpetuity. For as long as the university goes on, we'll be able to offer those scholarships every year. I'm just really impressed by that. But part of the reason I'm so thankful for Cal State is it really did get me off the farm, so to speak. A lot of my friends that, I went to high school with, and then maybe it's fine, they're milking cows or driving a truck, but, I'd rather be doing what I'm doing. So that's what Cal State contributed. So I didn't really work in the field that I was educated in. I fell into political science for a combination of reasons. And I am still today quite concerned with the interactions between capitalism, democracy, and a sustainable world. There's a lot about capitalism that does not help with a sustainable world. And one of the things I learned about capitalism that is through my work is that it's a self-enforcing dynamic. If you find some task is too difficult, well, it'll just somebody else will do it, and they'll get the money, they'll get the profit, they'll get the accolades and recognition. So somebody will always go that extra mile and beat you at your own game if you're not totally dedicated. But that's a trap of a kind. And one of the ways that capitalism traps people is through the operation of competition. Competition drives your behavior. As I was just saying a moment ago, if you won't do it, then someone else will. And capitalism enforces that logic by delivering winners and losers. The people who aren't willing to get up those extra 10 hours each week don't do as well as the people who were willing to get up and do that extra effort. So one of the things that I always worry about is the way capitalism works. And the wonderful things about it are mitigated by some of the downsides about capitalism. You know, the whole thing about capitalism is to exploit the natural world. And that's really what we do when we're in business. In a business like I was in, I wasn't directly exploiting the world. I was providing talent. I was providing workers who would help their client do their business. And one of the things that happens in that talent industry is that it gets very competitive itself. How much you're going to pay someone drives what you're going to try to charge your client. Your client's looking for lower price points. It really puts pressure on you to attract highly skilled people. Typically, highly skilled people are going to be better compensated people. And if you can't provide the right skill set, you can't service that client. So once again, it's a really circular, self-enforcing kind of dynamic. So what I had to figure out how to do is, how could I be a humane employer and also outcompete everybody that was trying to beat me at my own game? Not that easy. Not that easy. So in this talk, I'm going to try to give a few insights about how to do that, what we did as an example, and try to help people who are perhaps still enthralled in education and not yet out in the business world, how to see your way through to participating in our wonderful capitalistic economy. One of the things that used to bug me quite a bit is when the politicians would get on TV and they'd start talking about, oh, they're job creators. They said, these people said, oh, I'm a job creator. And these other people are working for the government or something. They're not a job creator. That used to make me crazy. I'm a job creator because I started a company and I hired people. And, you know, the United States is made up overwhelmingly of small businesses, and every single one of those business owners is a job creator. They're either employing themselves at a bare minimum or providing jobs for other people. So the idea of being a job creator is kind of something that has taken root in our culture and our politics, and it's a very important element of the United States of America and how we compete on a world basis. Little disclaimer here, you know, I'm not providing a well-researched dissertation at this moment. I'm going through some of my own personal thoughts and experiences. So I just want you folks to know that. And if there's anybody out there with some pushback or, you know, even a loose argument that we can talk about, I'm really happy to hear it. And you may change my mind on something and I'll have to go hit the books. looking at the news these days, you can see that employment is under a lot of pressure from a lot of different sources. You know, Jerome Powell at the Federal Reserve is expecting job losses because he's driving interest rates up. He's driving interest rates up because they feel the economy is going to be overheated. What does that mean? Inflation. So they're combating inflation by taking away jobs. It's a shorthand way of looking at it. Not only the Federal Reserve is expecting job losses, but over 50% of employers in this country are expecting job losses because of the fight against inflation. Reading Crunchbase, they said tech layoffs are hitting startups, brand new companies, the hardest. But large companies such as Netflix and these others are also trimming headcount. I read in The Guardian, and I think it's important sometimes to read diverse news sources. The UK is expecting to lose from 500,000 to 700,000 jobs due to the fight against inflation. Even the rich Nordic countries that we envy so much for their lifestyle and their social safety net, somebody reported they're in shock after losing 660,000 jobs. I read recently that Amazon has cut 100,000 jobs. It's all over the news that Apple, not only they're laying off people, but they're laying off recruiters. So they're not even going to plan to hire at the same rate in the future that they used to. And then we read where Starbucks and Google and Apple and Amazon and Walmart and so many others are experiencing a unionizing trend. Well, let's see, could you figure out the logic? I'm getting laid off, my benefits are being cut, my pay is being cut. Maybe I'm going to unionize. Maybe there's a logic there. So I think the news, if you take a survey of everything that's going on, you can't conclude anything else except that employment is under a lot of pressure in this country these days. So is inflation driving those job losses, as I just said a moment ago? Is it foreign competition? Is it the war in Ukraine? Or wait a minute, is it this whole new generation of young people who don't even want a job? The so-called quiet resignation, which I've heard about. I have members of my own family that are doing that. And I come from an era and my background is such that I can't even contemplate what they're thinking. And of course, I don't know if there's anyone on the call that wants to throw in a question or a comment, but I put these question marks in here because when you think about what's really driving these job losses, isn't it perplexing? What's wrong with having full employment? Why can't we ever have full employment? Well, as a CEO of a corporation, I've hired up to 1,000 people at certain points in the history of our company. And I think I know what drives job losses. It's greed. It's greed on the part of the business owners. It's greed on the part of the clients who don't want to pay a fair price for the services. If a company's not actually failing, then the reason they're laying people off is because of greed. Oh, but CEOs, they have to respond to their boards, right? Well, yeah. But the boards have to respond to the stockholders, right? Well, yeah. But then stockholders want returns on their investment, right? Well, I'm a stockholder. Greed is me. Greed is us. Kind of harsh way to look at it, but in our capitalistic system, good returns on your investment means that somebody, somewhere, is paying for it. But I'd like to make the point that unmitigated greed is not good, no matter what Gordon Gekko said in that one movie. You look at capitalism in a macro way, going all the way back to Adam Smith, who, well, if he's not the founder of capitalism, he's certainly the founder of the capitalistic description that we all use. And if you read carefully, he really didn't think that government should be too involved in business, that business would regulate itself because of competition. But he realized in later chapters in his book that businessmen, and they didn't think about women in those days, but businessmen will work as hard as they can to prevent competition. They'll do as much as they can to get a monopoly in their particular area of work. So even Adam Smith came around to the belief that there is a role for government in business, and that is to prevent monopolies. An important role in our government in the United States is to prevent monopolies. And, a cursory look at the history of the 1900s through about 1940, it was a history of robber barons gaining almost total control over the economy and essentially not regulating themselves to the point where there was a major worldwide dislocation. It was only the FDR era and other things that took place around the world that brought those monopolies somewhat under control. More recently, we have Thomas Piketty, and that book is out. It's thick, it's hard to read, but the essential point is pretty straightforward. It's looking at over 250 years worth of data, and a very creative search for data was undertaken. He found data in places that people hadn't looked before. What he was able to determine from this analysis is that the rate of return on investment is consistently greater than the rate of growth in the economy. This increases inequality. This increases monopoly. This increases wealth in the concentrated hands of a few. However, today we have a neoliberalism movement that is one of the two major parties, is almost entirely oriented around neoliberalism. And this concept has insinuated itself into both parties, political parties in the United States, as well as major economies in Europe. And what it is, it's the idea that no, you don't need government regulation. You've got to let these companies run rampant, run the way they want to run. Let them do what they want to do. It's a resurgence of that robber baron idea. And you see in the news all the time now, if you look around, everybody's urging the privatization, for example, of Social Security. They're trying to deregulate a variety of industries. We have President Bill Clinton, the Democrat, did what he could to get NAFTA through, which was a way of lowering barriers, lowering friction across the border with Mexico, thereby globalizing some of the work that used to be captured in the United States. The same thing as far as free trade and the return of monetarism, the use of austerity concepts, trying to make people think that a government budget is the same as their personal budget, so that austerity is good, smaller government is good. You see it in the news now where there's a whole faction of people that are just up in arms, practically carrying weapons, because they're opposed to an increase in the size of the Internal Revenue Service. These folks are dedicated to a smaller government, which has less ability to regulate business. And they're dedicated to increasing the role of the private sector, both in the economy and in society. So it's kind of macroeconomics to look at what's going on in our daily politics as we look at the news. It's kind of funny to me how theory meets practice right on the front pages of our news outlets. So I don't know if many of you are political scientists, but there was a famous book written by Lenin at the in the early days of thinking about the Soviet Union. And the question on the cover was, what is to be done? But we face the same question all the time. Are we victims? We can only just go along? Or can we author history according to our own desires and values? Piketty looks at 250 years worth of data. But are those forces irrevocable and irresistible? What about Adam Smith? Is he right in the part of his book where he says that, leave business alone, let them compete with each other? I don't know, and my own thinking is still evolving. But the role of greed in capitalism, I think, is one of the major dynamics. That's what drives competition. That's what drives profits. And that drives some of the negative things that I mentioned earlier. And so you can see what my values are. They're on display here. And I'm not suggesting that everyone needs to embrace the values that I happen to have arrived at. But I do think there is an interest in general for humanitarian businesses that provide good jobs, livable wages, necessary benefits, and social safety nets for people who, for one reason or another, can't really function in a straight up competitive situation, whether that's for reasons of health or other kinds of capability. Most businesses are very able-oriented, and we even have something called what is it called? Oh, I'm sorry. Lost a word there, but it's performance-oriented, and that implies ableness right from the get-go. So when someone's ill, they're older, they're born with certain capacities, we need a social safety net if we want to be humanitarian and humane. So what I did with my company is I engineered that. I made sure that we did that. And it wasn't that easy because there I'm recapping some of the things that we faced in our business. Not only is the world more globalized than ever, meaning corporations can go get workers in a much lower cost venue than, let's say, West Hollywood. And there's this increasing trend towards monopolies in the West, increasing trends towards authoritarianism in the rest of the world. And because of these factors, and particularly the communications, the ability to travel far cheaper than humans could ever travel at any time in previous history, the world is increasingly competitive because everybody can get into the game. So as I'm saying, it's getting tough out there. So the company that I ran is still out there and they're still doing very well. We founded in 1992. They didn't even have the internet at that point in time. We didn't have a website until 1998 or something. But we were immediately placed into a very competitive space. The competition for talent always increases when the economy is doing well and growing. And we've just come off of about a 30-year period of a very high growth economy here in the United States of America. So not only was there fierce competition for clients and lots of pressure on profits to try to attract those clients, and not only many upstarts trying to undercut the existing participants, but somebody invented the idea of gig workers, and whole sections of the industry were moving away from employing people as regular full-time employees and using them as throwaway, part-time, itinerant workers, much the way the farming industry has used immigrants over the recent 100 years or so. Oh, that started happening in technology work. It started happening in insurance. It started happening in banking. Get this, it started happening in government. We had government agencies using contractors instead of employees. Pretty amazing, pretty amazing. So if you were in a situation like I found myself, you might have been like one of my competitors. You might have beat me at a couple of jobs. You might have cut benefits, used the gig workers, offer short-term employment, try to really wring out profits from each engagement. And there were quite a few people caught bribing clients too. But no, that's not what we did. You know, I'm giving the talk here, so thank you very much. I want to make it a success story. So we went and did it our own way. I really think you could read this slide for yourselves without me having to just drone on and on and on here. But what makes this come alive for me is having been there. I remember this guy, Jim Tierney. It's a real person. And my brother worked with me at this time, and he had this opportunity with a company called Digital back in the days. And they really wanted this guy, Jim, but they only wanted him for 90 days. And Jim didn't want the job because, well, it's 90 days. And then he'd be looking for a job again. So I told my brother, I said, you know, I was developing this perspective from the beginning of the company. You hire that guy, Jim, permanent long-term employment, get him some good benefits, and let's see what happens. Well, that guy worked there 18 years. We had to finally give him a retirement party. And it's one of my favorite stories because it's a real person and it really worked. So how did the company do? Well, as I mentioned at the beginning, we built it up to where we were billing out $75 million a year in client billings. Some of our employees, it started to get to be a little bit of a problem because after somebody works with you for 20 years and they get even a 3% or a 4% or a 5% raise, wow, that, you know, after a while, that turns out to be a real salary. But we continued nonetheless to offer industry-leading salary, educational benefits, health benefits, of course. We had retirement programs, and we even had a sabbatical. In your 5th year of working there, you got to take an extra week off. Woo. And I have to ask myself whether I made less money than I might have made. Maybe. But I didn't feel bad about it at all then, and I don't now either. So, you know, unspoken part of the presentation here, undocumented, I mean, I just think about all the people going to Cal State Long Beach that are going to go out and start companies. Of course you are. You're going to go out and start companies, or you're going to rise through the ranks with your excellent education, and you're going to be in leadership over a department or even a whole division or even a whole country. And you're going to be hiring people. And you're going to be looking at the pressure from the board of directors. You're going to look at that competitor who's over there trying to undercut your prices. And you're going to be looking Jim in the face and going, you know, woo, what kind of a job can I offer you, Jim? So I hope each of you will find your own way through capitalism and try to find it, try to create it in a way that we can have a very humane and humanitarian life being provided for people in our country. And we can do it without impoverishing ourselves at all. Just slightly different choices in at each decision point.
Yeah,
I'm ready to take questions.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Randy. And we do have quite a few questions come in, and it's particularly pertaining to your business. So I hope you can. I know you wanted to sort of just read the slide for that, but I think a lot of people are interested in the business that you created. So, and your journey there. So, just to start off, the first one we have is, what made you create a technology services business? And or did you have an interest in technology? And, what was your journey to creating that kind of business?
That's a harder question than maybe it sounds because, I worked 15 years before I started my company. And I would commend that strategy. It's almost an accident, but I would commend that strategy to anyone who wants to start a company. It feels to me like it's very important to have experience in an industry in order to be able to excel in that industry. And as I mentioned before, the pressures of competition and price competition particularly mean that you actually have to be good at it to excel. And so that's often based on education. And I can commend CSULB for that, but also work experience. And I guess the basic answer to that is I came out of the Army. After 3 years in the Army, I was a sergeant. They wanted me to re-up for another 6 years. But I found out about this thing called the GI Bill, and I realized they were going to pay me almost as much in education benefits as they were going to pay me to re-enroll in the Army. So I took that route, and of course it was, I think at the time it was $345 a month or something. So obviously I needed another job. So I read half a book on transistor theory and got a job in a electronics repair shop. And the rest of it is STS history,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know that there are a lot of students now that work through that are working, putting themselves through college. And it kind of what you were kind of piggybacking off of what you were already talking about. Someone wrote in and says, like, how does one go about starting a business this is a more generalized question. How does one go about starting a business? And is it best practice to start with identifying a product to sell? Or I think you were talking about work experience. So what would you say? What would be your advice for how one goes about starting a business?
I'm trying to think about the person who asked that question, because it's kind of a blank page question, like, okay, I don't know what company I want to start, but I think I want to start a company. Well, there's a very
entrepreneurial spirit.
Right. There's an easy answer to that, because there's a book you can buy called How to Start a Business in California. And it goes through all of the, institutional things that you've got to do to actually create the company. But it tells you nothing about what that company is going to do. And I'm familiar with all the advice that is bandied around in self-help books and stuff like, oh, do what you love and all this kind of thing. Well, I'd say do what you love if it demands a good margin. If you want to be in business, you have to make money. So you need to understand a business plan. And again, there's a book on a business plan. You can read that and figure it out. But basically, the business plan is where you confront yourself with the questions. Why is anybody going to pay for this? Or even starting in an earlier phase, what could I do that somebody would pay for? I can give you 9 right now, because the entrepreneurial spirit is an unbounded thing. clean swimming pools, cut trees, deliver things for the UPS company, buy a truck and haul things, start a moving company. You can think of many, many, many things to do. But the question is, what's best for you? What do you have a special access to? What do you have a special understanding of? You know, Bill Gates, he had his father who could afford to finance the company. Well, if you've got that, then that's an asset that a lot of people don't have. A friend of mine told me the other day that she had this little hair product. She's a stylist, but it was too small. It didn't carry enough stuff, and she wanted to have them made in a larger size. Okay, first of all, she has no design experience. She has no manufacturing experience. She has no retail distribution experience. She hasn't done a study to find out if anybody else wants a bigger one. And she's standing, what I would say, flat-footed, not ready to go on TV and get funded by the Shark Tank. So I would say start at zero and figure out what it is that you can do that somebody will pay for, that you have some, they like to call it in Silicon Valley, unfair advantage. Like maybe you know the guy that makes those plastic boxes. Okay, so you're a leg up on the other people. I might have spent too much time on that question.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. Next question that we have is, what advice would you give to a student struggling to balance work and a full class load? I know you yourself, you're a non-traditional student in that you went to the military first and then came back and went into that. So for students who are trying to have their full life outside of school and also school, what advice would you give to them?
Well, one thing that I would tell you is no longer necessary. And that is, no, I can't even tell that story. It's terrible. I was going to say, don't take a class with this one particular professor because he never gave anybody an A, ever. Okay, but I won't say it that way. The truth is, I think you should apply for the Benjamin R. Stockton Endowed Scholarship because it's a full ride for tuition and books for those lucky 2 people that can win, can get it. But other than being, you know, the winner of the lotto or the winner of the scholarship, I think, well, for example, it took me 5 years to do a 3-year program. For example, in my undergraduate work, I didn't strive for straight A's. I had to take a sort of a good enough approach. I think the best thing to help you with that is pure desire.
And a passion for it, right?
That's what I mean.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I am not now seeing any more questions coming through the chat, and we are at time. So I would like to say thank you so much, Randy, for joining us today. And I thank you so much for your engagement here with us, with alumni, with the political science department. You know, as far as next steps, you know, are people able to reach out to you if they have any questions?
Certainly.
Or if they, you know, if they have any thing they want to talk to you about?
Certainly. Yes, indeed. The only thing is, I'm unemployed now, so I really can't give you a job, but but I can try to help with anything else that sounds fun or interesting. And as far as people thanking me, I want to thank everyone because I get an awful lot more out of this engagement than whatever I give. It's been great working with the team at Cal State Long Beach. It's been great working with the team at the political science department, and so many of the old guys that I used to go to school with back in 1978 and 1992 were still with the university up until a couple of weeks ago. And we formed a little chat group and we stay in touch. And I hope all of you will do that with your professors and fellow students as well.
Yeah, networking for sure. And if anyone did want to get in touch with you, can they hit you up via LinkedIn, or is there an email address that you have for them?
Oh man, one of the strongest forms of advice that I could have given anyone, and I don't even give advice, but don't do social media.
Okay.
But you can write to me on my email. It's my last name, Stockton, at STSII.com. Stockton at my old company name, STS, International Inc. Explains the II part.
.com.
Thank you, Alana. She put it up there in the chat box.
That she did. Well, thank you so much. And we look forward to sharing this out even more widely. Thank you so much. And
bye, everybody.
dear participant, have a great day.
Thank you.